Frozen Dawn, and we're ready to get into the second best of three of the night. Apologies once more about that delay. Obviously, as we mentioned earlier, the first best of three happened a little bit quicker than anticipated, so we were way ahead of schedule, and we were just waiting on a couple of players to get home and get ready for the games. But we already have our lobby ready, so we're just going to rattle through the pre-show pretty much as quick as we can. Make sure as well to join in the conversation on Twitter using that hashtag ESL Prem. You can let us know who you think is going to be taking this one. Obviously, this is a best of three between Last Remedy and Perilous Void. But don't forget as well, the finals have already been announced. You can head over and meet us at MCM Comic Con in London in October. That's the 28th to the 30th, and the tickets are available at mcmcomiccon.com/London. And that's where you're going to be able to find us over at the end of October. But let's start talking about this series. In fact, let's see what you guys thought, because we've been using that hashtag ESL Prem, and we've done a Twitter poll for you guys. And it turns out that we have exactly 50-50 between everyone. And when I voted on it, which was about 45 minutes ago, I think there was already 40-odd votes, and there must have been a lot since then. So, you know, this is an even matchup, to be quite honest, according to the fans at least. So we'll have to see if that is going to be the case. And speaking of the matchup, I think the first thing we need to do is let's take a look at these two lineups. Obviously, you're the resident expert here. Who are the players that we need to look out for in these two rosters?
So I think for Perilous, you want to put quite a big eye on Artorias and also onto Prosfair. Prosfair is sort of one of the more highly ranked players on the team. He's been around for quite a while. Used to be in Challenger quite a long time ago, so does a lot of work for the team. And Artorias, the sort of player, they're actually twins, if anyone didn't know, Artorias and Prosfair. But if Artorias does get going, he can really snowball with those leads. And I would say for Last Remedy, the people to look out for would be Rifty and Toaster. Rifty plays this super aggressive play style, and he either goes huge or can really fall behind. And actually the same is with Toaster. He either goes off at sort of 10-0-10 on Ezreal, or he's actually falling super behind. His team can end up losing. So I think that would be my people to look out for.
All right, well, we'll see if that is going to be the case as we head on to the Rift. But just before we get into the action, we are going to once more enter the predictions, and I'll spare you guys the light show. I'll spare you guys the light show this time. But Will, what are you expecting coming into this series?
The light show is what I'm expecting.
I can light show if you want me to light show.
I think it tilted me.
Okay. Yeah, so what are you expecting coming into this series? Because, according to the Twitter poll, it's 50-50, sure. And I've got to say, this one's a more difficult one to call.
It certainly is. This is definitely sort of my favourite best of three coming out of the group so far. The thing is, it's Perilous, who has been together a very long time. They've got quite a lot of team synergy together. But when you look at Last Remedy, they've got these really talented, experienced players that haven't had time to mesh together. So for me, from a sort of prediction point of view, I would say that it might actually end up being Last Remedy, most likely 2-0ing Perilous, just on the sheer sort of raw talent that the team has. But that being said, there is certainly potential for Perilous to pull some shapes in this best of three.
Okay, well, I'm going to play the devil's advocate on this one. If the Twitter fans are 50-50, I feel like we should be 50-50 too. So I'm going to go the opposite way, and I'm going to say Perilous Void to take this one. I think it'll be a 2-1. I think it will be a close series between these two teams, but, I feel like one of us has to go the other way. So Perilous Void it is. But I think the players are just about ready to get this game underway. As you can see, those are our predictions down below. I'm going to keep track of the predictions, by the way, across the season, so we can have a look at playoffs. Who is the king? But I'm just going to let them know that we are ready to rock and roll and get into this pick and ban. Move on into our second best of three of the ESL UK Premiership Summer 2016 season. And I mean, guys, we're finally here. We've made it to summer. We've made it to another season. It was a long break, but we have made it back now.
I mean, it's been lonely without the ESL Premiership, to be honest. Summer has been very slow. And, even then, the previous best of three wasn't a full best of three. So, in a sense, this is almost our first true best of three that we're having here. And it's one of my, one of the most exciting matchups, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we are going to be jumping into Champion Select. It's Perilous Void up against Last Remedy. The first ban coming out is going to be Rise. Obviously, Rise, the reworks come in. There's that global, well, not quite global, but the AoE teleport.
Yep.
That definitely there can be strategies involving that Unfortunately, someone has actually left the lobby, so going to find out. Oh, apparently someone just DC'd. I was thinking maybe it was a misclick on the ban or something. No, literally just a DC.
Did we see a ban after the Rise ban there? Or was it just the Rise ban from Perilous that we saw? I can't remember. But either way,
it was a Rise ban from Perilous.
Perilous, and we didn't see Last Remedy's first ban, did we? So that's a shame. But
I didn't see the other ban.
No,
got
that's fair enough.
Some mad spam going on in the lobby.
I don't notice the
serious spam.
Rushed up. Yeah, that was funny.
Either way, yeah, we should be able to get this going on again as soon as possible. Not sure what we're waiting for on this one. Everyone did join the lobby and then someone's left again, so
they'll have to get back into order. So it might take a little bit of time.
God only knows what's going on in this lobby right now, to be quite honest. But yeah, I mean, let's talk about some of these matchups in the lanes that because we kind of glazed over everything just to get everything underway as soon as possible. But you know, there's some pretty interesting matchups between these two teams, and one of the big ones I want to talk about is this top lane, because you mentioned how Rifty has this super aggressive playstyle. He wants to go ham, but that's kind of how I've always viewed Artorias. Not necessarily that he always wants to go ham, but he's one of these players that's kind of a coin flipper, you know. Historically, at least, especially when Fizz top was a big thing, he would either just dominate lane and run away with the entire game, or unfortunately go too aggressive and fall behind because of it. Yeah. Would you say that's a similar thing to what we've got going on with Rifty?
Yeah, it's very similar. I mean, Rifty's always had the advantage of being on a team that has been in a position that can very often support him if he makes those mistakes. You know, Furin will then apply a lot of pressure if he does fall behind, or, you know, in previous teams that is. Or, you know, because he's falling behind, his mid lane is getting ahead, stuff like that. And, you know, that comes from the build-up of teamwork and, you know, how one allocates or how the team allocates their resources. But that does take a lot of practice, and is something that, you know, teams have to work on. Now, with Last Remedy having been a team for, you know, I mean, not necessarily even a week, it's, you know, hard to imagine that they will have this synergy other than just purely relying on their own instincts. And of course, if their instincts do all align, that's going to be fantastic for them. But if they're off, it could spell disaster, I think. So this is kind of what I'm really looking out for in Last Remedy, to see if they've managed to gel in just a, you know, small number of days they've had together.
Well, that is going to be the question, and I think a big kind of question mark above Last Remedy is going to be whether they can be that kind of mixed team. You know, is it just going to be one of these teams like we saw from Banditos last season, where it was kind of just, you know, 5 really talented players. Obviously, you had the synergy between Maxlaw and Alfari, who'd been in teams together for a long while before that, but generally speaking, it was kind of just a squad put together of high caliber players that could just single-handedly win lane and then win game.
Yeah, I think that's certainly possibly the case with Last Remedy. I mean, truthfully, I hope it's not. I mean, I want to see them gel as a team because they have so much potential in there. You know, even Toaster, for example, obviously Origin's AD carry, or one of the 2 AD carries for Origin, you know, has incredible potential as a player. So I kind of want to really see that shine through here in the ESL Premiership, which is, you know, something we haven't, we certainly didn't see at I-58. Toaster definitely had quite a sort of questionable performance in that tournament. So I think he's, you know, going to really come out here with something to prove.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we've got the Rise ban as was before, but we've also got a Shen and a Gnar ban, which, you know, we didn't see Shen banned out in that last match between TCA and GLB. And to be honest, Yopper just ran away with the game because of that. He was dominant on Shen, and it felt like Shikari couldn't really do anything about it on that Mal fight, and this time it's going to be banned away. What are you expecting to see heading towards that top lane with Gnar and Shen banned, as well as the Tahm Kench? You know, we're kind of running out of the stereotypical options to some extent.
I think Echo is the immediately highest priority top laner now. I can imagine either side banning it here, obviously. Perilous actually opting to ban Italy, but I mean, Riftiano loves playing Echo, very comfortable on it, and is one of those champions as well that if he does go too aggressive, he can just sort of ult out and jump away. But Artorias, again, obviously favouring the Echo as well. So I think it's the current highest priority champion in this particular draft setup.
Yeah, well, we'll see if Echo is going to be the pick, whether or not we see Last Remedy ban that one. Obviously, it would be a potential first pick over on that blue side, but it's going to be the Braum coming through as the final ban. So
Graves.
Braum, another one of the champions that was in that last game, but as you rightly say, Graves is open. This is a very viable first pick, I think.
I think, especially with Braum taken away, Braum does a fantastic job of sort of checking Graves. I mean, it's not like it's hard counter, it's just a lot of what Graves wants to do is burst. He could be shielded.
Yeah.
But with Braum taken away, it certainly sets up the Graves first pick here, which, you know, does get taken. I am expecting some kind of echo, I think, coming out from Rifty here. Followed up with a sort of, a generic jungle pick such as Rek'Sai or Elise would be my.
So you mentioned some kind of echo. Are there different variants that you expect to see out of Rifty?
I guess he's got multiple skins.
Yeah, that is true. That is
some
very true.
You could build Luden's Echo.
Yeah. I can't Academy Echo. I was going to say just
the
Rebel Schoolboy
sand
Echo.
one as well, isn't there?
Yeah, Sandstorm.
Sandstorm.
I think
there
it's
you go.
Sandstorm. I've got Echo on my screen. I'm actually going to
Yes.
check. I can't check.
You
so
can't
never
check
mind.
because you're not picking champs. Nice.
Rest in peace. But for a second there, I thought that was going to be an Evelyn. I think that was a misclick.
She did get changed recently and slightly buffed. So, possible, but...
I think the
Ezreal.
Elise is a much more likely pick, and they're actually going to lock in Ezreal as well. So, AD carry locked in, and very late game AD carry. So, we've seen that twice now. We saw Echo earlier on today. In the hands of Toaster123, though, this guy, he's been in the LCS now. He's come back to the UK scene.
I'm sure he doesn't like.
Obviously, we've seen a lot of Ezreal out of this guy over the last couple of years. This guy's been in the UK scene for a long time. I've had the pleasure of casting many a game of him, and I think one of the champions I would most remember him for is his Ezreal, if not his Vayne.
Yeah, I mean Ezreal in this meta as well is perfectly strong champion, and Toaster has had some very good performances. Really nice thing about Echo is you can kind of look after your Ezreal even is that you can look after yourself. But considering that Lucian and other AD carries are still open, it seems a little bit odd to me that they're picking it this early, but clearly don't want to give too much of their draft away. Maybe you want to try and counterpick support by baiting in a melee and then picking a range or something. So I do understand the Ezreal pick, but I'm not, entirely sold on it.
Okay, well, the Vladimir has been locked in here for Brad. So this is a champion we mentioned before. Very strong right now. What would you suggest Last Remedy need to do to kind of play into this? How do you pick around a Vladimir?
I think you take Cassiopeia here, pretty much 100%. I mean, the alternative is, I guess, you just pick Malzahar if you know how to play it. Like, both of those champions are fine into Vlad. And the thing is as well that both of them can suffer to Bard quite a lot. You often see, like, if people take Cassiopeia, people often then counterpick with kind of like a Bard because you can lock her down so easily. But obviously, with the Alistar now being locked in, that's not going to happen. So I think Cassiopeia is a very respectable pick here. Zoran, I'm sure, can play that champion as, she is very meta. Yeah,
we'll see if that is going to be the lock. And Nivea is actually going to be the decision. So this is a super old school lane. Vladimir versus Nivea. Are we watching Season 2 right now? This is going to be exciting to see. And I'm curious as to how these two play this. Because, a lot of matchups these days, Vladimir tends to be fairly aggressive in lane. He can be one hell of a bully, which is something, not native to Vladimir early on in the game, like pre-rework at least. And in Nivea as well, you can have a lot of lane presence if you want to play that style. So I'm curious to see how this matchup is going to pan out.
Yeah, so I honestly think generally give it to Vlad just because he has the option to be able to pull the stun, which is kind of like Nivea's best way to set up her combo. But because she can bait out the pull so easily, it can set up Elise ganks very nicely. So I am expecting Broxah to work well with the Nivea here to sort of counteract some of that natural sort of passive counter that Vladimir does have on the Anivia, but she also might even take Ignite, which would help her in this matchup.
Well, we were talking before the broadcast, and you were saying Artorias loves his Kled, and I think that is going to be locked in. We have the first Kled of the season, boys and girls. It's going to be in the hands of Artorias. And, I was saying, Artorias likes to go ham. What better champion to do it on? I think Kled is pretty much the epitome of ham.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, I'm not sold on Kled as a champion. He seems a little bit unreliable. I haven't kind of seen anyone dominate on that champion. But looking up Artorias on op.gg before this, it's like his last 17 games are on Kled. So he clearly loves playing this champion and obviously picking it into what is possibly the Trundle top lane, but that could also be Trundle being sent into support and then picking some sort of counter to Kled. I know that Rifty does play a bit of Kled, so he might have a counter in mind as well, which would be very nice to see. Possibly even the Fiora, which...
Yeah,
gets locked in. So
I think you might be right on the Fiora there. It is going to be locked in the end. So we have our compositions finished up now. And, we were talking about the bottom lane last time, that 2 versus 2 matchup, and we gave it the way of Lucian. I've got to say, versus an Ezreal Trundle, would you say that Lucian lane has it once more?
It's essentially just how well either either lane players, to be honest, because both supports are melee and don't really have any sort of hard counter to each other. It's pretty much just who plays better, who positions better. For example, Nutri can use his pillar to lock Prosphere out of the fight and then go in on the Lucian, and then Alistair can't run around the pillar fast enough. Things like that can happen, but in the same token, the Lucian will out DPS the Ezreal if they get into Lucian's sort of
close quarters,
Lucian's range, but Ezreal outranges Lucian anyway. So a lot of really interesting interactions in this bottom lane, but I'm not necessarily expecting it to be explosive. It just certainly has the potential to be.
Okay, well, we'll have to wait and see, and I think the junglers are going to have a big say on how explosive that lane is. I want to see similar to what we saw in the TCA game earlier, that kind of teamwork, that coordination coming into play, because we saw like 5-man ganks not only in the bottom lane but also in the top lane to secure those towers, and I fully expect to see that kind of thing coming through for these teams, especially like Last Remedy. You've got some incredibly experienced players on that roster. I know Nutri, for example, his game knowledge is so vast, even when he's not been playing League of Legends. His knowledge of the game, his knowledge of his understanding of the fundamentals of League of Legends is so high that you should expect to see that kind of gameplay out of Last Remedy. But then, the point you brought up earlier, this is a new team. These guys are still going to be kind of getting the hang of playing together. So
yeah, and I know that Nutri obviously previously played in XL, and I know that he was quite public about his disappointment in himself about his performance at I-58, saying that he really should have been doing a lot more to carry the team with his game knowledge, with his sort of understanding of the macro play. And he was very, very self-critical. Now, it's only been a couple of weeks since that tournament, so he may not have sort of regained the confidence that he could have lost, and having a sort of shot caller that's not that comfortable can be quite difficult for a team in general.
Okay, so now I want to talk about the top lane. We've got Fiora versus Kled. Now, typically, like on paper, you would think both of these as quite aggressive champions. How would you say this lane is going to pan out? Who would you give the advantage to if you had to pick a side?
So it essentially depends on whether or not the Fiora can riposte the Kled's
bear trap on a rope.
Yeah, essentially, bear trap on a rope. I'm never going to say that because it's too long.
It's such a long name.
I'm going to call it the leash or the stun. It's a stun, isn't it? Not a snare.
No, it's a snare and then a pullback.
Okay, yeah. So it allows him to combo, essentially, which is obviously very nice. But if Fiora can riposte that, she wins the trade, like, straight up. So a lot of this does come down to, essentially, the mechanics of the lane. The only thing certainly worth mentioning is that Last Remedy does have an Elise, who is notoriously a better ganker than a Graves.
Yeah.
She obviously has the ability to sort of walk into lane, repel in, and then land her stun quite comfortably. Shouldn't be too difficult against a Kled either. Whereas Graves in this situation is pretty much relying on either a counter gank or Rifty just going way too aggressive, which ironically is something you can rely on historically from Rifty. So,
all right, well, I do just want to quickly, now that we've got both of the rosters fully locked in here, I want to kind of pick your brain on what the playstyles are going to be for these two teams. What are their win conditions? How are they going to go forward on the Rift and actually work their way to victory?
So a lot of it, I think, depends on essentially whether or not the Elise can get her laners ahead, because both Anivia and Ezreal are really, really like late scaling. And so as a result of this, essentially, Perilous has to make sure that they may get a lead from the natural just dominance of their champions and then snowball this lead ahead, whilst Last Remedy is sitting there with sort of the Anivia wave clear, trying to clear the waves out. So from my perspective, a lot of it sort of depends just on which team gets ahead early and then can hold their lead either until the late game for Last Remedy, where they will then win late game, or for Perilous to take their lead and snowball it through the mid game into objective after objective, and of course eventually try and close the game out. So for me, it's actually very, very tough to call. Honestly, I'm not entirely sure like where I would put my sort of money in this particular game. A lot of it, as we sort of touched on, just depends on whether or not Last Remedy can gel together as a team.
All right, well, we've got our analyst is kind of torn on the compositions. You guys at home are torn in the poll, and clearly me and production are on the same wavelength right there as the poll appears on the screen magically. But actually, Perilous taking a little bit of an edge now, 53%. So maybe Last Remedy have got a bit of a mountain to climb in terms of popularity, but still very, very even on that one. And I think a lot of this as well is just going to come down to mechanics. I'm excited to see these team fights because we have some high caliber players on both of these sides, and especially I want to see how the AD carries do. You know, Toaster has always been praised previously on his positioning. So, you know, we mentioned how when it's in these team fight type games, positioning is going to be absolutely massive if we do have an even fight.
Yeah, well, the really interesting thing as well about the Perilous comp is that it can entirely dive onto the backline of Last Remedy. Essentially, the entire team can charge forward. You know, Graves, Vlad, Alistair, and then Lucian just being a short-range AD carry. They can all dive in. And Last Remedy is going to have to rely on things like the Anivia wall, fantastic Anivia positioning, Ezreal reposition with his E. All of these kind of things, you know, use of the pillar to try and outplay Perilous, but they do have the tools. You know, they have the pillar, they have the wall, and with these sort of things in mind, I think it's going to be very, very interesting. And as you mentioned, entirely, well, not entirely, but very much mechanics based from the teams. And I think naturally you would give the mechanics over to Last Remedy just because the players are so high caliber. But that being said, Perilous could nip it in the bud with some teamwork.
Well, we'll have to wait and find out. And just to kind of keep you guys in the loop as well, Riskit is in fact Rifty, and Schoolboy P is Chris on that other side over on Perilous Void. So just to kind of fill you guys in on some of the names aren't quite what they typically go by, but you've still got your Toasters, your Nutries on those lineups. So I'm curious to see how this one's going to pan out in the early game. What do you think is going to be the case in this early game? Who's going to be the ones with their foot on the pedal trying to dictate the plays? Are we going to see one of the teams going full TCA on this and orchestrating the pace of the game?
So I think we're going to see Elise doing a lot of pressure in the sort of laning phase, and a lot of Sankas trying to check Broxah. So essentially, Sankas wants to be where Broxah is to essentially either counter gank or put the wards there so that Elise can't get her gank, so that he can then farm up. Because Graves in this matchup has to get ahead via CS and then utilize that into this sort of massive mid-game power spike he gets, where he can essentially just 75% HP someone at, like, you know, 2 items effectively.
Yeah, it's a huge amount of burst damage. I'm liking this positioning in the bottom lane from our Last Remedy duo right now. They managed to push very far up the lane, and actually Toaster got level 2 before anyone else in the lane, so they kind of had that damage advantage, and Nutri was able to just walk on forwards and zone away Chris and Prosper. So nice little bit of play just to try and eke out any little advantage they can find.
Yeah, I think Toaster and Nutri did Frog or Gromp so that they could get that little advantage there against the Lucian, who can kind of outpush them if he lands himself a good Q. But overall, I think both the lanes will, generally speaking, unless there's some big errors that lead into big explosive plays, that bottom lane should be a little bit less volatile. It's certainly less volatile than, for example, mid lane, where Zoran has actually opted to take the Ignite.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm curious about that decision as well, because Anivia, a lot of the time you would see them go with a defensive summoner just because, you know, you're not a very mobile champion, and even if you go into egg form, if you 2v1, you are going to end up going down. So, interesting decision to go aggressive, and maybe that lends to perhaps their game plan. Maybe Broxah is going to start to focus on this lane pretty heavily.
Yeah, it's certainly a possibility. I think Anivia has loads of options with regard to her summoners. I mean, she often goes Ignite or TP just because, well, TP is just incredible, and Ignite gives her the kill pressure that she naturally has with her incredible burst. But truthfully, it's I guess it's a matter of comfort, but Zoran here obviously wanting to get some Elise pressure down so that he can pressure the Vladimir out. And as well, Ignite helps deal with, of course, the Vladimir healing. Kind of suggesting that Zoran might not be building Morello's, but we might still see the Rod of Ages Morello's build, which some Anivias have opted into.
Well, we'll have to wait and see in this one, but actually a bit of action in the top lane as Artorias is all out of Scarlet right now. The cowardly mount that he is escapes the lane, and a nice little trade coming out from Rifty to make sure that Artorias is feeling that damage. But, you know, that cooldown on the mount, it's going to be fairly hefty, but as long as he plays safe, he should be able to get that back fairly quickly.
Yeah, and it's important here that Sankas is coming around, knowing that Rifty's playing quite aggressive, but Rifty does manage to read it with the ward near the blue buff, so yeah, all things kind of safe here. Good warding overall. Actually, Artorias is
safe. There is going to be a bit of bonus health, and Artorias might have just baited out Riskit on this one, and he is going to get the first blood.
Wow.
What a nice little play coming out from Artorias. Still had his shotgun blast available as well. And I mean, dangerous game, I think is going to be the words that I need to say on that one.
Yeah, again, I mean, it's one of those things that if you play super aggressive, actually I think Broxer is probably going to be able to... Oh, good flash, actually.
Artorias unlucky on this one. The flashes come out and Broxer will pick up the kill, but Sankuz is here to punish. This will be a 1-for-1 trade, so still the advantage going to Perilous.
Yeah, it was a really good ward from Sankuz there to put it into that tri-bush when he walked up, just in case the Elise did go aggressive, and he managed to redeem that ward with a kill. So nice play there from Sankuz and Artorias. The nice little combination from the two of them. This is what I touched on with the whole team synergy thing. You know, clearly a little bit more on page than Rifty and Broxer here.
Teleport comes on through from Artorias in this top lane, and already the fight kicks off. Artorias jousting around, but running out of HP at this point. Skarl is going to escape the fight, and Risk It is looking to punish. If he can just proc these vitals, he will be able to take down Artorias at the very last second as well, as the mount was about to re-arrive. But it is going to be Chris going down in this bottom lane. Actually, no, a beautiful flash, as well as Prosper body blocking those skill shots. It is going to be an escape, and the score is now 2-2.
Only 200, 300 gold difference between the two teams. I think that...
Brad taking a huge chunk in the mid lane.
Yeah, sometimes you don't opt not to... Oh, wow, he's actually going to die to the Ignite here.
Ignite comes on through, and that is going to be it. Zoirin putting his pressure down in the mid lane. In the meantime, though, Risk It goes ham in the top lane using that ultimate, but can't quite commit to their tower dive, and Sankuz will live to blast another day. Oh, what? Collateral damage?
That ult...
I was not expecting that in the least. That is Risk It. What is going on this game? This is bloodthirsty right now. Infernal Trick going to be the first one once again, and that is going to go the way of Last Remedy.
So this is typically what happens when teams don't have that much team synergy, is they play it kind of a bit more like solo queue. They just play really aggressively and kind of constantly calling each other over reactively, no one with an actual solid game plan. And this can essentially lead into things like this, where you see 6 kills at 7 minutes. But interestingly, I spoke to Prosper before this game, and he said that if he is in a situation where there's loads of kills by about 20-minute mark, there's tons of kills across the board, that he actually thinks it will go for the side of him and his team, because they'll essentially be able to... well, they'll just be in a better position because it will be more chaotic, and they'll be able to out-macro, essentially.
They think that they're going to be better off in those kind of skirmish scenarios where they're just forcing fights left, right, and center, and they'll be able to pretty much rely on their mechanics and just being a team and finding each other in those spots. But we'll have to see if that is going to be the case. But right now, gold just about dead even at this point. CS across the board fairly even. We do have an advantage for Rifty up in that top lane, but the kills have been going either side, and generally speaking across the lanes, it has felt like pretty much a level pegging.
The only thing, I think the big threat for Last Remedy right now is that Sankuz is getting significant gold lead on the Elise with a 2-0 up and already ahead in farm. This is a situation that Graves really wants to be in, because now he can genuinely pressure the Elise in her own jungle. He can continue to farm up and apply gank pressure once he has red buff, which is kind of typically what Graves needs for these big ganks. That, or for his opponent to be super aggressive, which he can kind of rely on Rifty being.
Absolutely. Well, there's an all-in in the bottom lane. Prosper is going to be the target, but I'm not sure that's the target they need to be on. I say that immediately, just deleted, and suddenly Chris is all alone. Double kill comes through for Toaster, and that is going to be a lot of pressure down towards this bottom lane tower as well.
Yeah, so I mean, a really good play, of course, from Toaster and Nutri there. I think this is just one of those cases where there's simply more experienced players, or at least know this matchup better.
Yeah, and I think as well, capitalizing on the level that Prosper was at. He was the only one in lane not to be level 6, immediately just jump on him using those ultimates.
And interestingly, Nutri managed to hold on to Flash and Exhaust as well. So Prosper with his Exhaust, still allows for quite a lot of option for outplayability in the bottom lane, especially if junglers look to start pressuring.
Have a bit of a fight going on in the top lane. Artorias looking for the duel once more against that Grand Duelist, but that is going to be the challenge, and Risk It is happily able to take that one. I'm not sure that was the best fight to be going for. I think maybe needed Risk It to commit to the tower dive a little bit more first.
Yeah, I mean, I think Artorias needs to respect the fact that he's actually 30 CS behind in this matchup, despite the fact that, kills were kind of close at that point. Rocks are actually going to get quite heavily caught out here, but no, I think he's just going to... Oh, crossfair.
Good little cocoon there. It does come across, but all in all, It's going to be a fight starting to kick
not
off. Prospect's still not level 6, and he will be punished for that. Hema plate goes down, though, and they're looking to capitalize onto Nutri's HP bar. Collateral damage isn't enough, and Sankuz is stuck between a rock and an Anivia wall. Brad is going to be able to just about dodge the stun, though, but they cannot trade it for any kills. I say that, though. Kriz arrives on the scene, but just doesn't have the damage. Zoiran flashes out, and Last Remedy with an easy punish.
Yeah, Last Remedy now getting themselves quite a significant gold lead ahead. Nice vision still coming out from Perilous. They've got some good defensive vision lined up in their bottom side in case those kind of plays happen again. But at the moment, it's not looking so good. I mean, these kind of skirmishes have led to Last Remedy with their scaling comp being quite far ahead in gold. I decided, as I say that, Artorias is getting chunked out by Rifty, who's now 40 CS ahead.
I've got to say, Rifty is doing a stellar job up in this top lane. Artorias is in trouble once more, proccing those vitals all over the shop. And, I mean, well, this is no longer a close matchup at this stage. And, you know, one of the things I mentioned before this game was Artorias is kind of notorious for being one of those coin flippers, you know? Like, he can either dominate the lane, and Kled definitely a champion to do that on, but when he falls behind, I'm not sure he's respecting his opponent right now and really being punished for it.
Well, it's interesting as well because Artorias, of course, got the first blood in this top lane and then died to Broxer, who then died to Sankuz. But with that lead, you should be able to pressure your lane enough. But obviously, he then got solo killed, which is obviously, you know, commending Rifty here. But that sort of shouldn't happen. You should be allowed to get solo killed. But again, it looks like he might... Oh, no, Sankuz actually.
Well, this time he's not looking for the solo kill. His jungler is around, but... I mean, this is one of the things you were mentioning. Graves, not typically that good at ganking.
No, he relies on certain conditions to be met, you know, having red bar for them to be going over aggressive, to be able to easily gank, which...
Speaking of over aggressive, we've got a fight in the bottom lane as the top laners go toe-to-toe once more. Toaster is going to be dropped though, and it's Kriz with the advantage this time. Nutri trying to capitalize and finish off. The AD carry heal comes out, but Nutri has to back away in the end because he knows that his team is on the way. And Kriz has nowhere to go. Prosper going to be chased out. Kriz, oh, he doesn't get the execute. I thought he was going to get an execute for a second there. I thought they'd abandoned him, but Prosper doing a decent job to survive this one, actually, using that ultimate, and will be able to escape with his life.
Yeah, good job, of course, for Zoran to roam down there. Nice for the team to communicate that. I think it's very important to note how Zoran did move across the map there. You typically don't see Anivias roaming too much, but very important that if they get the right opportunity, that they do, because they do have a lot of gank pressure when you think about it. You know, the combination of the wall combined with the Q, but it does look like he's going to be first tower, I believe, going over to Last Remedy. And as we've touched on I've touched on in many broadcasts so far, that first tower is just so important for teams to get because of the amount of gold that it gives you. Yeah,
and on top of that, Infernal Drake as well, with the amount of gold that they've started to accrue, 5,000 in just 13 minutes. Last Remedy looking in a fantastic position. And another, apparently the Premiership only has Infernal Drakes. This is the 5th one in a row now, but we are charging on in as Zoiran is going to be the target. Gets burst down into that egg form and will not be picked up once more. That's the dragon going down, and it was actually picked up by Last Remedy despite the kill going the other way. Sankuz is going to drop though, as Riskit is looking for a 1 versus 3, and I think he's found it, but that might not be a good thing. He probably will be going down here as Nutri tries to trade places with him and save that player, but Brad flashes forward to execute another. And it is going to be a 2 for 2, but with the dragon going the way of Last Remedy, I think they just about win the trade.
I mean, it's certainly true, and there's still a 5k gold lead, but now it's really important for Perilous to try and get this mid tower. If you win a team fight like that, despite, you know, other losses, you really just want to look for the next objective immediately, and they've obviously discerned that to be mid lane, but I'm not entirely sure if they're going to be able to get it against Elise, of course, with the AP build. Oh, actually, a lot of aggression here, but I think she's going to be able to defend the tower.
Yeah, good job there by Broxer, knowing that he could go, not completely ham, but able to go in a little bit and just clear that wave to make sure that they lose that mid lane tower. Because, you know, the mid lane tier 1 is arguably the most important of those tier 1 towers. It gives you so much ability to just go into the enemy jungle. It removes so much of their control of the map. So good job by him to make sure that that is protected and will stay alive.
Certainly true. I mean, it was at full health, so even if Perilous had free damage, I'm not sure how much they would have been able to get it. But nonetheless, we've got CS leads now across pretty much every role except for jungle, where Sankuz does need to come into his own here, using that 2, he was 2-0 at one point, now 2-2, so really needs to kind of step it up and carry a little bit, but this could be the opportunity.
Certainly could. We've got a fight up in the top lane as Prosper is going in. Nutri going to be the one to be targeted right now. He uses that subjugate, but it is not going to be enough. And with the exhaust down, Toaster is in a whole heap of trouble. The collateral damage will be enough to blast him into another universe. And suddenly Broxer and Zoran are left leaving something to be desired.
And Zoran here still trying to roam across the map there. This time nothing came to fruition, which is obviously not so great for him. Impressive for Perilous to pick up on the over-aggression of Last Remedy there. Nice of them to be able to get themselves 2 kills. And as I was sort of criticizing Sankus for not being in a position to carry, he goes ahead and helps set up an assist and, of course, gets himself a kill. I do want to see both of these teams prioritizing Rift Herald a little bit, but as I've mentioned before in broadcasts, towers are just so important in this meta. Far more important than pretty much everything else, up until, of course, Baron and Elder Dragon, which goes without saying.
Yeah, those kind of god tier objectives. I want to say that
the objectives.
Yeah, absolutely. Those late game, I guess game ending objectives, right?
Yeah.
They're the ones that can make you really push forward. But we're going to charge on into this mid lane. Zoran could be in trouble here as Artorias leaps on forward, but won't actually be able to connect immediately. The damage is going to come out from the frozen bird, but the tether will be there. The pullback comes on through, and the bear trap on a rope will be the end of the birdie. But Broxer should be able to get away with this one. A nice true shot barrage, actually, doing a good amount of damage and really forcing away the chase.
I think they could be happy with that, though. I'm not sure how many summoners they burnt, but I think only Artorias burnt his flash for Zoran's flash and, of course, the kill. They might lose the top tower, though, and Sanka's actually getting himself quite caught out, but if they can hold this tower, it's very worth it.
The teleport will come on through from Artorias, and that means the tower will survive. So nice little bit of play coming out from Perilous. They've kind of evened things up just a little bit. They're still 4k down, but a couple of plays like this, and or a couple more plays like this, and they've pretty much evened things up. They keep hold of the tower, and so far it's not actually looking that bad. I thought it was going to be a much worse situation at this stage in the game when we were looking earlier.
Well, this is primarily due to the fact that Last Remedy's comp relies on the tiers to stack up. Until they're scaled up, they're sort of not actually getting that much bang for their buck.
Crossfair goes straight on in, flashes forwards to get onto Broxer. That's going to be a kill going the way of that angry little Yordle. Artorias going to be very pleased with that one, and despite kind of that, Artorias was 1-4 at this point. He's now 4-5, and with 4 assists, he's getting himself back into this game. However,
you're going to mention the CS, aren't you?
Yes.
Yeah.
We are. I mentioned Flame Horizon in the first game. We are 7 CS away from that point for Risk It. Rifty is going pretty bananas in this game, and 2 CS away. There it is.
Here we go.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Flame Horizon comes on through. Artorias is feeling the burn off that one.
Oh, yeah. I mean, Clade isn't necessarily the kind of champion that he has a respectable amount of impact late game, of course, but he really shouldn't be falling this far behind even in the early game. But this ultimate is what makes him useful, and he still has it here. Yeah,
charge comes on through, but I don't think it's going to be the wisest decision in the end. A Mystic Shot is all it takes to finish off the Yordle, and suddenly the fight has turned into a full-on skirmish, but Prosper has been left out to dry by the rest of his squad. And they keep on funneling in one by one. Toaster is looking to punish as he flashes forward, but cannot connect his Q. And 2 kills, they're going to be more than happy with that one, and now they're going to be looking for objectives.
Yeah, this Rifty flank as well, actually really nice to try and help. Oh, unless he goes and does that. Well, I wasn't expecting him to go that ham.
A little bit overkill.
I was that one. Well, would have been nice if he just pressured from the side there, but instead they've actually exposed their flank for Vlad.
Hemo play comes on in. Toaster is in trouble. Nutri with a nice flash over the wall will be able to escape, but I can't say the same for Zoran right now. He needs to be consistent with these slows, but he's running out of distance, and Brad will flash forward to make sure that this kill will be finished. Egg Form comes on through, but Egnivia is not so tanky and will be dropped.
Yeah, Broxer just trying to pick up some farm as well. The Dragon does spawn in 5 seconds, but I think this top lane tower and potentially mid lane tower as well are far more valuable at this moment in time. Breaking the outer towers is just so important for teams to be able to give themselves some sort of map pressure.
Absolutely. Well, looks like that pressure is going to be headed towards the top lane right now as Perilous looking to grab some towers for themselves. A little bit of a fight in the mid lane as well. Not really a fight, more just pressure, to be honest. But Broxer, again, going to be in that mid lane, making sure that they just can't get this damage down.
This true shot barrage, actually, very, very good from Toaster. He hit all 3 of them, which, didn't get them any kills, but it does allow Last Remedy to set up near the dragon now. So this is what we're going to see. as the team sort of rotates around here, gets themselves vision, and might even just start it, to be honest, as Rifty is pressuring top lane.
Rifty doesn't have teleport right now though, but I don't think that's going to matter all too much. The Cloud Drake should be picked up here, so mini Mobies for each of the players on Last Remedy. They should be pretty pleased with that one in the end. And Zoirin should be able to grab himself a blue buff to boot. So Last Remedy, you know, still in command of this game. They've got that 5,000 gold lead, or 6,000 gold lead now for themselves. So they're definitely feeling comfortable, and we've been mentioning how Perilous are kind of clawing their way back in. It's just about even on kills, but when it comes to map pressure, it's all about Last Remedy. Here comes the fight, though. Nutri has been tethered and will be pulled on back in, but he's getting to be a pretty tanky troll, and will be able to heal himself back up a little bit with that ultimate. But Subjugate down, that could be a big factor in the upcoming team fight if we find one.
I mean, the only thing I would say is that other than a flash Alistair engage, Artorias' ult is pretty much the most important sort of engage tool that they have as Sankus gets
Goodbye, Sankus. Oh no, he flashes out. The red buff won't be enough to finish him, and Nutri on this front line tanking away. Zoirin finishes off Artorias. And now we see Schoolboy P, Chris himself, in a whole heap of trouble. Nice little dodge on the Mystic shot, but it's not enough to keep him alive. And now Brad zooms on through with his belt, but it's not going to be enough to finish off any kills in the end. Zoirin survives the skirmish. And this bottom lane tier 2 is under a bit of pressure, but actually with how low the health bars are, I don't know if they can commit to this.
Well, I mean, Toast does have obviously very good poke here, and he has fully upgraded a tier now, so they might be able to, but of course, as you mentioned, Zoran pretty low HP. I'm not sure if he has his egg up. I can't actually check, so thank you. But obviously that's quite an important thing, because if Anivia can flash engage forwards, which sounds ridiculous, but if she does have egg, it is a play you can make if you do burst someone down.
Regrettably, it is on cooldown.
Is it on? So I guess maybe we won't see that
Never
until
lucky.
she has Zonya's. Never lucky. This interesting build from Zoran though. I'm not entirely sure. I guess he just wants to finish the Archangels and then has the Lost Chapter for the sake of the mana regen. Actually, makes sense. Only really viable if you are significantly ahead to sort of opt into so many different items, but as they go, it does make sense here.
Yeah, and I think as well, they're in that kind of comfortable position where they know that with this little bit of a lead that they've managed to find, Perilous aren't going to be in the driver's seat. They're not going to be the ones dictating the pace of this game, and that means that they can afford to go for these more, I guess, greedy build paths, right? They have the time to work towards that, so shouldn't be punished too hard for that one unless there's some kind of engage forced by Perilous. But even in that scenario, almost 10,000 gold down, I'm not sure forcing an engage is the right option.
Well, no, the only big concern for them is that they pretty much do get outscaled if they don't pull some big shapes now. Fiora, of course, going to be a monster split pusher, and then Ezreal and Anivia are just going to be so hard to get on top of, despite the fact that Graves and Vlad can get there. But this could be a very important team fight for both teams, but it does look like nothing is going to come of it.
True Shot Barrage went wide there, and it is going to become on cooldown now. But, you know, for the side of Last Remedy, all they have to do is I think it is a Kled ult, but the Nivea wall comes on through, denies everything, and it's going to be Chris 1v1 by Toaster to start off the fight. And all in all, this is a very spread out skirmish, but I think it's going to be going the way of Perilous if they can finish off Zoirin. What am I talking about? No, it's not. It's definitely going the way of Last Remedy. 4 kills go their way. Sanko's the last remaining player, and he just bails up into top lane. There's no way he can get anything out of the back of this fight, and the inhibitors are in serious trouble.
Yeah, I think this inhibitor is definitely going to fall. I don't want a cool game just because Artorias and Kriz respawn in about 5 seconds, so it's probably safe to back off. Maybe consider the Baron, but Artorias does have that teleport available, so could be a risky call, but you know, Last Remedy, I imagine, the kind of team that wants to take that risk, you know, very confident in themselves.
And I think as well, the fact that they've been sweeping on the way, they haven't found a single ward. This is invisible. There is no knowledge of this from
dying fast
Perilous
as well.
right
It's down
now.
to 5k. Artorias doesn't have ult to engage, so it could even be free.
There we have it. Really good punish there by Last Remedy, like knowing that there was no vision and therefore they can just rush it down for free. And with how far ahead they are, Blade of the Rune King in the hands of Toaster as well, they can burn that down so quickly.
Yeah, good to see the good shot calling from Last Remedy, to know that they were comfortable enough doing that. And that's the kind of thing that just comes from instinct. The team was probably all on the same page, knowing they could do this objective as Toaster 1v3s.
Toaster, you man! Just walking in. The Mystic shots coming on through nearly finishes off Chris, and I think he's looking for more. I've seen this kind of play from Toaster before. He's ready to go for this one, but Artorias is going to be in the wings, and I think that's enough to kind of dissuade Toaster from the ridiculous 1v5 plays.
Yeah, well, with this late game scaling comp and with the Baron buff, of course, Fiora TPing as well, it's going to be very hard to imagine Perilous coming back here. It's going to be sort of one huge epic team fight for them if they can get it.
Brad getting in a little bit of a tricky situation there, as Rifty wanting to punish him, but won't be able to do too much. And with Brad being on Vladimir, he will be able to sustain himself back up, so it's not the end of the world for him that he took that chunk of damage. But the real thing to talk about right now is the fact that Last Remedy, they're just heading up towards this top lane, and they're going to go for that 4-1 split push. And how do you deal with this right now?
Well, unfortunately, the problem is that Vlad doesn't have any armor, so he can't really handle the Fiora. All he can do is sit under his tower and kind of wave clear and hope that he won't get dived because of his pool. But, I'm not entirely convinced. And right now, it's just whether or not Last Remedy wants to pull the trigger, which is what Rifty seems to be doing.
You said you're not sure if he can handle the Fiora. The answer is he cannot risk it. Punishes him for being a little bit overzealous, and that is going to be a 1-for-1 trade in the end. But it's not that good of it's not that great of a trade if you end up losing an inhibitor in that trade. Sanko's as well going to get taken incredibly low. Flashes on out and will survive. I say that, no he won't. At least jumps on forward. Broxer finishes off the kill. There's one for Toaster as well. 3 men down. And losing an inhibitor on top of it. Nexus towers are going to be falling. Chris even going down on Fountain almost right there. And looks like this one will be going the way of Last Remedy. What a game coming out from them. Convincing performance as the Nexus will fall. And we go into a 1-0 lead for Last Remedy.
And so, this was obviously very interesting to watch, simply because Last Remedy did seem to come together. But it's certainly true as well that there were slight things that Perilous did that, certainly showed some sort of promise. Especially coming into game 2, if they drafted maybe a little bit more into the early or mid game, they might be able to get themselves more significant leads. Perhaps they'll opt into drafting for the late games so that they can kind of make the same plays they did, but then actually scale with sort of Last Remedy's comp. So I'm actually really looking forward to game 2 here. Certainly may not look that close when you look at the scoreboard, but I certainly think Perilous had those moments where they could have come back into that game.
Yeah, I think it was all in terms of the skirmishing. That was where it was really close between these two teams. We saw a lot of fights going the way of Perilous. With that kind of gold lead, you wouldn't expect that to be the case. And I think a lot of that story was just about that top lane. It was such a huge lead from Rifty. He was able to completely run away with the game. And off the back of that, when you can't deal with that split push pressure, there's not really many ways to get back in the game.
Yeah, that's certainly true. I think the junglers did a good job of pressuring the top side of the map. I certainly think Sankus did a great job of picking up that kill onto Rifty. Well, I think he picked up the kill onto Broxer, who then ganked after Rifty got solo killed. But I expect to see any team that plays against Last Remedy to play around top lane just because of how aggressive Rifty consistently plays. And I think, if Perilous do adapt slightly, apply more pressure to this top lane, maybe even look to run like the Rek'Sai or the Elise themselves to have those ganks, then we could see, a sort of a change of pace in how these games develop.
Absolutely. Well, we're going to head into a quick break, but do not go anywhere, because in a few minutes' time, we will have the second game in the series, and we'll find out if Perilous can get themselves back on that horse. We'll find out just after this.